Welcome into another edition of the Movie Geek Podcast. I'm your host, George T. And as you saw from the thumbnail, I had another guest on. He is Rich Keefe from the WEEI Radio Network and the host of the hashtag dorkpodcast. He was a guy that I reached out to when I first started the podcast and got to meet him a couple of weeks ago at the Midday Roadshow, the first ever one they did live from a roadshow from the Greg Hill Show. So it was good to meet him. I was able to talk to him long enough, and he agreed to come on the podcast. And here's our conversation. I hope that you enjoy it. So here we go.
It's time!
It's showtime.
It's showtime. And here we go.
Rich Keefe from the Jones and Keefe Show from WEEI, and welcome aboard. I DM'd you last year when I wanted to start this, and you gave me some advice, and I really do appreciate it. And I was looking at this the other day. I'm like, Jesus, I was at 75 episodes, but I've had a lot more time this year than last year. So I've been able to see a whole lot more stuff. So I was like, man, like crazy. And then I know you do yours live every week.
Yep.
Yeah, see, I don't know if I could do that just yet. I might do it maybe for maybe a specialty occasion, like maybe the 100th one, but
Mhm.
same time I'm like, I don't know, like, because sometimes when I go back and edit and I'm like, Jesus Christ, sometimes it's talk forever. So hoping not to do that too much here, but
Well, it's funny because we used to just record ours and then, upload it after the fact. And then it was actually during COVID when we started changing how we did it. And we were recording on, at the time, just YouTube through a certain platform. And we're like, might as well just make this live. Everybody's stuck at home. Everybody's doing whatever. Let's just once a week fire it up live. If people want to jump in, great. Way more people listen to it after the fact than watch it live. But we're like, hey, let's just put it out there. And then ever since then, we've just kind of kept it consistent and record our episodes for people that want to watch them. Then they're there, so you can always go back and watch them after the fact, or whatever's easiest for everybody. So that's just been something we've been doing, I guess, now going on 5 years.
yeah, that's crazy. I didn't even think I'd get through 1 year. Let's put it that way.
Most podcasts don't. A lot of people start them. They're like, hey, this is a great idea. And then, your life gets in the way, your job gets in the way, family, you have so many time commitments. You're like, all right, well,
that's what happened last year.
Sure.
I didn't really I had a laptop that really sucked last year. And so basically I just found time to use the equipment without so mostly everything was audio. And I was like, okay. And then Christmas time was coming around and I was working in retail at the time and I had no time. And I'm like, shit, like I just don't have enough time. So this year I've been able to get more done and have, a computer that actually can actually do video.
That helps. Yeah.
Right, exactly. What got you into, sports radio? What was, I know you went to Hobart College.
Yes.
You were a wide receiver there.
Yeah.
So, was that something you always wanted to do, or?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I was that kid that was obsessed with sports, played sports like my whole life, whether it was football, basketball, baseball, loved it. Was able to, play all those sports through high school. And then in college, I just played football. but they also had, and so I was also interested. Like I knew I wasn't gonna be like a pro athlete or anything, so I was interested in like play by play, color commentating, like TV, radio. I was interested in all that too. I wanted to be involved in sports,
Mhm.
and we had like a college radio station, and a buddy and me, we started a show, like a once a week live sports talk show. Like the program director there was open to it. We like, we had like a music show on before us, another music show on after us, but he let us do, I think it was an hour, and then it might have turned into an hour and a half once a week show. But it was a blast. Like we would talk about everything. We'd have other guys from the football team on and like interview them. And I did that for all 4 years. And so it was super fun. And then after school, I was like, I don't know. I mean, I like doing this. Let's just at least see where it goes. And, I grew up in New Hampshire. And when I got out of college, there was a small radio station in Nashua, New Hampshire that did all sports. And I got in there sort of like the ground level doing like high school football and basketball updates. You'd like call in the scores as like a correspondent. And that was like the first kind of quote unquote radio job I had.
Mhm.
And I was there for a couple of years. I kind of moved up while I was there. And then the sports sub became a new station in Boston in 2009.
Right.
So like WEEI had been like a wagon for such a long time. And I tried getting in there like to no avail. And then the sports sub popped up and I got in, and I was doing like weekends and kind of filling stuff, but I got my foot in the door there and kind of went from on every once in a while to eventually on every night, part of the night show. And then from there, get sort of plucked over to WEEI. And I've been there, man, like 7, maybe 8 years. Like I've been there now a long time, but
and
it's a blast. Yeah, it's a blast.
You have floated all over the place. Like you,
Yeah.
is that easy for you? Like it's got to be hard to, um, you know, be on a show and then probably be told, hey, we're either going to switch you to like, nights and or days or whatever. I mean, how does that work?
It was tough. It was definitely tough. And it was tougher, so I have two daughters now, and one's almost 6. The others will be 3 in the fall.
Mhm.
And so early on, like some of those changes didn't really matter as much, right? Like there, you move shows and whatever, and you're like, hey, I'm still working at the thing. But then once you get your family and like your kids are involved, and you go from having sort of a set schedule, and you're home every night for dinner, you're home every night for all that whole nighttime routine,
Right.
and then that changes. That was kind of tough. It's probably tougher on my wife, honestly, than anybody else. And so now she's home alone with them for that whole time. But I did that shift for what ended up being less than 2 years, and then I ended up getting moved back to where I'm at now, which is middays, which I think is probably the best shift for a family. I can drop off both the girls in the morning, and I can even pick them both up. Like that's sort of like not a lot of jobs allow you to do that, and so knock on wood, that's where I'm at right now. I hopefully don't want to jinx it, but hopefully I can stay there for a while.
Well, we won't jinx that. So, yeah, you're in a perfect spot because
Mhm.
I know when you were on the nights during the summer, I mean, was great because you only
Mhm.
had like an hour, half hour, and then
Short shows. Yeah, I was doing like Red Sox pregame shows, which were like an hour. Yeah, that was
right,
it.
exactly. So, uh, where did your love of film come in and your dorkness, let's say?
Yeah, good question. I mean, it's another thing, and I think it's very much related to sports. Like I was obsessed with sports and like, knowing statistics and knowing players and knowing all that stuff. But then I was like just as interested in movies. And I remember like at an early age, whether it was like Star Wars. I mean, Star Wars is probably the one that got most all of us sort of like,
Yeah, it got me. I
most
remember,
people, right?
Yeah, my dad took me to my first movie, which was Empire Strikes Back, and I was hooked.
Blown away.
So,
I remember I don't think I saw it until I was 10, because I remember specifically the summer I was 10, I was on like a baseball all-star team or whatever, broke my hand. So I was out, and that was back in the day where they didn't have like the waterproof casts. So you were
Yeah.
literally like the summer with a big old cast on your hand
Hmm.
was the worst. So all I did was watch movies. All I did was go to the rental store, come home with movies, and watch movies all summer. And I remember asking my dad, I'm like, "What's your favorite movie of all time?" And he's like, "Probably Star Wars." And I was like, "Okay." So then I ripped the original trilogy like over and over and over again, and then got into all kinds of stuff. I also, and this has sort of come out a little bit later on, but I was also a big comic book fan
Hmm.
and loved comics, loved the X-Men, loved the X-Men the animated series, Batman the animated series. And then they started to make those, like once I got into like high school, they started to make those movies, right? They started to make like the Hugh Jackman X-Men, they made the Tobey
Yeah.
Maguire Spider-Man, they made Wesley Snipes Blade. And it was like,
Yes. Yeah.
whoa, like you have all this stuff too. So it's like worlds were colliding because like me and my friends were already in on all that stuff. And now it was becoming super mainstream on top of Star Wars prequels and the sort of adding to that lore. But then I really got into like horror movies by the time like high school rolled around. I was kind of scared of them as a kid, but then like older, then I got older and I like made up for it and watched everything under the sun. But yeah,
Yeah.
movies and TV and sports, I kind of, and I end up talking about them the same way. Like I could argue, who the best center fielder is of all time just as easily as I could argue, what's the best horror movie of all time. And I think people, a
Right.
lot of people I think that like listen to our podcast feel the same way. It's a lot of crossover from like diehard sports fan into like diehard movie fan.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, my love for Star Wars and that stuff, and um, as a guy who's done some paranormal investigations, I love horror.
Mhm.
Obviously, Poltergeist was scared the life out of me when I saw it. I was a young kid, so and then I had a friend of mine who um, lived in her parents' basement, and we were like 10 or 11, and she had a stash of horror movies, and I was like, all right, let's watch all this stuff.
Yeah.
And you get kind of hooked on that and stuff. She had the like original Ring movies,
Oh wow.
from
Yeah.
yeah,
Ringu. Like from,
yeah, yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, that stuff. That
Yeah.
stuff really,
Intense. Yeah.
it's so different than the American horror because it's so psychological.
Mhm.
So yeah, that as a kid was just like, ooh, these are
Yeah.
pretty scary.
Yeah. Oh, big time.
So, but so and then you said comic books. I wasn't a big comic book fan, but like you said, X-Men came out on cartoons,
Mhm.
and really got into that way, and then obviously superhero movies started coming out, and we go from there.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to ask real quick: DC or Marvel?
Oh man. Obviously I would say overall the Marvel movies have been better. I would say DC comics are better, and it's because they have all the great Batman stories.
Hmm.
So I think if I had to give you my top like 25 comic books of all time, I think most of them would be DC. Obviously, there'd be like Image and
Right.
other comic book makers too, but I think DC would have more than Marvel. So even though the MCU is one of the most impressive like movie accomplishments of all time,
Hmm.
um, I think just straight comic books, I would go DC.
And I really think, and I said this on one of my podcasts, I think the MCU is back on track now. I think they're in a better direction. Phase 4 was a disaster because the movies were just terrible, and the shows were actually pretty decent. Then
Mhm.
we got to middle of 5, and they said, okay, we're just going to scrap a whole bunch of stuff, and then we're going to make quality films like we did back then, and now we're going to not do so much quantity because it was like, all right, we're just going to pump this stuff out, and then the movies are just terrible. Like
Yeah,
Doctor Strange and the Multitude of Madness. You
yeah.
would think after Spider-Man: No Way Home, this thing was going to be like crazy, and
Mhm.
then it just was like, the hell is that?
Well, and
you
then
know,
I mean, they're the classic case of being like a victim of their own success. They set the bar so high and they did such a great job at like tying all these things together. And then they did have like this ultimate payoff,
Mhm.
but you want to keep going. So you're like, all right, well, how do you
Right.
keep going? I do think once you start bringing in multiverses and all that stuff, it is, in comics. but I think for just like the regular movie fan, it's a lot. And then it also kind of lowers the overall stakes, right? Because you're like, I don't know, what do deaths really mean? Like, there's, oh, you just grab this guy from over here, and there's another version of him. They also started a trend where they would like set stuff up in certain movies that had no payoff at all.
Oh
And
yeah,
you're like,
yeah.
and like I think that started to really aggravate people. And then the TV shows are both I like a lot of the TV shows. I'm with you. But again, for the straight movie fan that wants to go see the blockbuster, they're like, wait, you want me to watch 8 hours of TV for like one thing that I need to know for this?
Right, right,
I
right.
think that became tough. And then they tried doing the thing where they were saying, well, you don't really need to see the show, or you don't really need to see this. But it's like, I don't know. The way
We
my
know.
mind works, I want to watch all that stuff. And there are a few things that you do need to see.
Right.
It's not truly a standalone movie or a standalone show. It takes place in this universe. And prior to, you wanted everybody to watch all the movies, and now you're trying to tell us that it's kind of a la carte. And I'm like, I don't know if it works that way.
Right, exactly. And now, now they're bringing in, Jessica Jones, and they're trying to bring
Mhm.
that stuff back in. Um,
Yeah.
and, and then we've got Galactus coming in with Fantastic Four, which
Yeah.
I'm still very on the fence about. I just, there's something about the Fantastic Four. Again, we've seen it three movies now,
Right.
with, uh, Chris Evans and that lot, and then we had
Mm.
Michael B. Jordan,
No,
and
my
it
favorite.
just
I
right,
know.
and it
No.
just didn't work. And I'm like,
Yeah.
now we're gonna try this one more time, but at least now it's maybe Marvel, so maybe it will be good. Um, clearly Thunderbolts was really good,
Mhm.
and it sets that one up, or maybe it doesn't, because there's fan theories out there that Doom is actually uh, hijacked the ship and whatever, and I'm like, let's just find out.
Yeah. 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 But like to your point, I think Thunderbolts was a really good movie. It was fun, good mix of some of these characters, some that we knew, some that we didn't, and then like a true mid or end credit scene that mattered. And like whether or not that's really the Fantastic Four, or if it's Doom or whatever else, it's like,
Right.
all right, that's getting you excited for the next movie. This isn't like the end of Eternals where they tease characters that like we're never gonna see again. Like
Well,
it's insane.
unfortunately, yes, that movie is pretty much erased from history.
Correct.
Although I do like that Captain America: Brave New World basically touched on the two infamously probably worst movies, and was like, we're just gonna
Yeah.
tie it up into a bow and just kind of out the
Yeah.
door.
They put it out there. I think was it She-Hulk that referenced like the giant hands coming out of the earth or
Yes,
whatever. So
yeah, a
She-Hulk
reference
at
point.
least acknowledged that Eternals existed, but nobody else up
Right.
until Captain America
They
did. Right.
right. They had no idea, and then all of a sudden, you see the trailer, and you're like, oh wow, they're actually going to, you know, reference it at least. But
Uh-huh.
because there's still a giant hand sitting
Right.
in
Exactly. You think more people would talk about it.
right,
But,
exactly. But they kind of just was like, let's just kind of walk away
uh-huh.
from this.
Definitely.
Um, so, yeah, DC, I did a podcast last year. Even with James Gunn, I still don't think that universe is going to work. I really just don't. Although surprisingly enough, my son George said to me, he goes, "Dad, I actually want to see this Superman movie." I'm like,
Mhm.
"What are you, nuts?" I'm
Mhm.
like, I don't know. For me, it just doesn't look good. I did like Man of Steel. I know a lot of people didn't, but Man of Steel was pretty good. And then, some of the rest of the movies were just not that good. And I'm like,
Oh,
the better DC movies were outside of the universe. The
right.
Christopher Nolan Batman series was absolutely amazing, and I was obviously one that grew up with Michael Keaton,
Mhm.
and and they did Val Kilmer and George Clooney, and I was like, ugh, just
Yeah.
turned off by it, and I'm like,
Mhm.
this is going nowhere. And then when Nolan, had Batman Begins, I was like, I don't know. But I went to go see it for free,
Oh,
and I was
worth it.
like, I
Yeah.
was like, oh, well, this is actually better than I thought it was.
It's great.
And
Yeah.
then, of course, Heath Ledger's Joker was
Mhm.
just absolutely amazing. And I love Tom Hardy's Bane in the last
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people, kind of were like, making fun of his accent in the movie. And I was like, it works.
Yeah, I had no
I
problem
mean,
with it. It was good. Yeah. I
yeah,
like Hardy.
exactly.
I like Bane. Um, so I don't love Superman. I've never been a fan of Superman. However, I do have I strangely have confidence in James Gunn pulling this off. And the reason is most, if not all of his movies, I think are very good. And
Mhm.
so I loved Guardians of the Galaxy 1. It's one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yep.
I thought 2 was pretty good, and I thought 3 was great. I thought he ended on a really high note.
Right.
He also did The Suicide Squad, which
Mhm.
was maybe the best of that sort of pre new DCU run. He did the
Mhm.
Peacemaker show, which I enjoyed quite a bit. He did,
My son loved that show.
I'm
He's
telling
waiting. He's waiting for season two.
yeah, season two
So
in August comes out, and then he
yeah.
also did Creature Commandos, which takes place in this universe. It was an animated show on HBO Max, but also a lot of fun. So even though I don't think the Superman trailer looks all that great, I think it's the right guy to try to pull this off. So I'm very intrigued, and I think by the end of July, we'll have a good sense on where both the MCU and DCU are headed because we will have seen Fantastic Four and we'll have seen Superman,
Mhm.
and I'm hoping that they're both great. And if they're not, then I think that would mean trouble for both, right? Because this is sort of the next wave for Marvel, and it's also like the big first step for DC. So they
Mhm.
both need to hit, and if one of them doesn't, I think that's a pretty bad sign.
Well, I think even if Fantastic Four isn't that good, I think it's still going to have a a following because everybody wants to know what Doomsday is going to look like.
Yeah.
So I think they'll get a pass for it.
Hmm.
But you're right. If Superman doesn't do well,
Yeah, that's
it's
tough.
not a good start for
No.
James Gunn. And you're right. Guardians of the Galaxy movies were really good, and I mean, they can't be kind of fun,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
seeing Dave Bautista as Drax is,
Excellent.
is
Yeah.
hilarious. My son and I got to meet him at the Rhode Island Comic Con
Oh, nice.
years ago, and it was right after Guardians of the Galaxy came out. So, and
That's great.
we got to talk to him a little bit about it, and he loved doing it, and he was great. He
Yeah,
was great in it.
that's
So,
excellent.
Star Wars or Star Trek fan?
Honestly, I didn't really watch much Star Trek. It never caught on for me. Uh, but I am obsessed with Star Wars.
Yeah.
I love Star Wars. I didn't even realize this about me, but talking about it on the Dork podcast with Davey a lot, with all these new properties coming out, I'm like, I think I like Star Wars even more than Marvel. Like, I think I'm more excited for the next Star Wars show, the next Star Wars movie, going back, even like digging into some of the comic books on Star Wars, the video games of Star Wars. And obviously I love Marvel, I love DC, but I think Star Wars to me might be my favorite out of the whole group.
Good, good. I like to hear that. Because I grew up with the Shatner group,
Mhm.
and then after that, I stopped watching because I was like,
Yeah.
this is, I never got into it after that, and Star Wars just, keeps, coming out with stuff. With the prequels, I remember seeing, um, I was working at Blockbuster at the time when that movie came out. Somebody got me advanced screening tickets,
Hmm.
so I'm watching it and like the pod racing scene, I was like all excited for. I get out of the theater and I'm like, shit, I can't tell anybody what happened in this movie. Like, I have to wait for my friends to see this
Yep.
before I can talk to them about it because I don't want to ruin it for
Hmm.
them. And so I know there was a lot of people that didn't like the prequels, and then sequels came out, and everybody went, "Oh, you know what? The prequels weren't that bad."
Yeah.
And look, all nine movies. Okay, The first 7 were okay. Like Force Awakens was amazing. Uh, Last Jedi. I
Yeah.
love Rain Johnson. Like he's
Hmm.
done some amazing work, but I think for what JJ had done in 7, he kind of just went off on his own, and it could have been a standalone movie by itself. It didn't have to be
Yeah.
a part of the trilogy because looking back and seeing it again, because they play it a million times on TNT and TBS all the
Oh yeah.
time. You watch it again and you're like, okay, it's not as bad, but it just doesn't, it doesn't work in that realm because now they had to come back to
Hmm.
JJ
Right.
after they had gotten rid of like 3 other directors because they were like, well, how do we finish this?
Right.
And then JJ does the fan service basically and kind of
Right.
ties everything up with a bow,
Right.
which wasn't bad, but again, it was fan service. Oh, let's put the Emperor back in there, and then we'll tie it all up. And we never really got to see what 8 could have been. If JJ had stayed on to do 8, we don't know what we don't know who the Knights of Ren are. We don't
Hmm.
really know Snook's thing unless read read a book about it or something, and it's like, what the hell? Like,
Well, I agree, and I just feel like the 7, 8, 9, like 9 is such a weird movie, and it's a hard movie to like rank or review because it's like it was just trying to clean up because 7 and 8 were so
yep.
different that
Hmm.
9 was like, all right, what do we do? Like, do
Right, and
we?
it's so fast. It's like cut,
Yeah,
cut, 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 cut. Let's chop it all in there. Let's get it
that
all in there.
one, that one has certainly gotten worse over time, and I like it more than 8, but
Yeah.
it was kind of in a tough spot. I remember reading that I think the original sort of trilogy was pitched to Adam Driver as you're going to kind of go the opposite of Darth Vader, right? So in the original trilogy, Darth Vader starts out as like the most evil guy in the world or in the galaxy, and then by the end of it, you're like, oh, wait a minute, like there's something in there. He's still human. Whereas they told Adam Driver that like Kylo Ren is going to start out as, hey, maybe there's a little bit of human, maybe there's a little bit of good in there. And then by the end, he's going to be like the worst guy going. And
Hmm.
that's obviously not what they did. That sounds
Right.
way better than what they ended up doing, which is too bad. I'm still interested in whatever the next Star Wars movies are going to be. I think some of those characters will probably get involved. I
Oh,
like
right.
I like the shows, but yeah, I so 7, 8, 9 might be better actual movies than 1, 2, and 3, but 1, 2, and 3 are way more rewatchable. Like they're way more fun.
Right. Right. Especially 3. I mean, that
Yes, three's a
opening, that
blast.
opening, that opening sequence. You're
Oh, it's
like,
incredible.
right. When it got re-released in the theaters, it wound up being in the top 5
Yeah, a
that
lot of
weekend,
people went and saw it. You're right.
and I was like, man, what? Why? Like, you could watch it on Disney Plus, but then
Mhm.
I remember talking to uh, Charles from California. He's a indie actor. I asked him about what you guys are seeing out in LA and stuff with all these movies getting re-released, or all these sequels, or
Mhm.
remakes and reboots and everything else. And he's like, unfortunately, I think there's a nostalgia uh, element to it, like
Yeah.
because Final Fantasy uh, Final, Final Destination Bloodlines was coming out, and he said, you probably get to see it on the big screen back then, but there's a whole group of people that never got to see it.
Right.
So when I was surprised when episode 3 was up there, and I'm like, how to make the top 5? And I'm
Yeah.
like, I remember there's a whole segment of the population who's only seen it on Disney Plus and went, you know what, we're gonna go see it on the big screen. And of course, that opening scene is just incredible. So
Yeah. I mean, it's the 20-year anniversary of it. So I guess it does make sense. They re-released the other ones, right? Like the prequels, or not
mhm.
the prequels. I'm sorry. The originals
Yeah.
were re-released at certain times. And obviously those are better movies, but still like there was a big new audience, right? You had like two real like a full generation plus of kids that were obsessed with Star Wars, and the only ones they had seen in the theaters at that point was 7, 8, 9, and maybe the Solo movie or whatever. But then they went and got a chance to go see Revenge of the Sith, which is a real fun movie and a great movie to see on the big screen.
Yeah, it's definitely my girlfriend Ashley's favorite of all of them.
Yeah,
Mine actually is still Empire Strikes Back.
same.
So
I love you.
I know.
You can destroy the Emperor. He has foreseen this. It is your destiny. Join me, and together we can rule the galaxy as father and son.
So okay, you're an Empire Strikes Back fan, so am I. I had a hard time figuring out how I wanted to show my oldest son, how I, saw the movies. Because if you watch it from 1 to 9 now, 5, which is Empire Strikes Back, kind of loses its appeal, so to
Yeah,
speak. Like
yeah,
so it's like, oh yeah, you can watch them in order now, but by the time you get to 3, by the time you get to 5, you're like, oh yeah, we already knew that already. So I had to have them watch it the way I saw them and
agreed.
stuff. So
Yeah,
it just
I would do it the same way. I think that's kind of probably how it was intended. That's how you're going to have like the best moments. I think 4, 5, and 6, you're then left saying, all right, like how did that guy become that way? And then okay, then you get 1, 2, and 3, and then if you want to, you can watch all the Clone Wars stuff, all the Rebels stuff, like all that stuff just sort of adds
right, and that's and
the
those
whole
were
universe.
really good too. Yeah. What did you think of Rogue One and Solo?
So I loved Rogue One. I think Rogue One is the third best Star Wars movie. I would go
I agree.
Empire, I would
I
go the
agree.
original, and then I'd go Rogue One.
Mhm.
And awesome. And then Andor just made it even better. Like watching Andor, can't believe how good Andor was. 2 seasons, so basically like 24 hours or whatever that ended up being.
I I
Of
had
a
a hard
character.
I had a hard time with season 1. So I have to go back and watch season 2 because everybody keeps talking about it. So I'm like, all right, I'll go back and watch it and I'll
It
do my
starts slow, so hang with it. I think it's also 12 episodes. The first few, you're like, all right, this is good. And what they do is I think it's 3 episodes. Then they do a year time jump, and then 3 time jump, like a year each way, just so it can lead right directly into Rogue One. And so
um
the final 2 arcs are as good as anything.
all right. Does it kind of tell why there's such a discrepancy between 3 and Rogue One as far as the building of uh, the Death Star? Because when you see the end of Revenge of the Sith,
Mhm.
right? They're just starting to build it, and then you look at Rogue One, and you're like, uh, okay, it seems to be built a little bit faster,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
then you get to New
Oh,
Hope, and it takes like 19 years. Like, you know what I mean?
well, there is, yeah, the creation of
Or
the Death Star.
16, or
Yeah, right. The creation of the Death Star is addressed quite a bit. So,
okay.
like, yeah, I think it helps. Um, but yeah, anyway, so I love that. And then even then, as soon as I finished episode or season 2, I immediately went back and rewatched Rogue One, which I remember liking immediately when I saw it in the theater, and then I like it even more now than I did then. I didn't love Solo, and I think it's such a tough go because you're not creating this new character. You're asking an actor to play a younger version of one of the most iconic characters and actors, really, like
Right.
of all time, and like one of the most beloved of all time. So I liked some of the like the Darth Maul, was it the Death Syndicate or whatever? Like I like some of that little breadcrumbs. I thought Donald Glover was a pretty good Lando,
Yep.
but I don't know. I think it was just such a tough ask. I don't even blame was it Eidenreich or whatever that played Han Solo. I just think it was such a tough ask, and to me, not one of the better Star Wars movies.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was pretty good. Bringing Maul back was like man, can we
Mhm.
just let this guy die already? Because they bring him back in the Clone Wars, and he's still looking for Kenobi,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
it's like, man, this guy can't die.
I know it is amazing because he was such a cool character to start the prequels, right? Like, all
Mhm.
right, here's the prequels, here's this new character, and then we're gonna get rid of him. And like, oh, like that's
Right.
it? Like he's done?
Yeah.
And then so like Dave Filoni and everybody, like they're like, no, no, we're gonna bring him back. And some of the coolest stuff in the animated shows
Yes. Yeah.
is
Absolutely.
Dathomir and like him and like where he comes from and his duel with Ahsoka and like the whole thing is great. But you're right. It's like, all right, what are we doing here? It's like it is past a comic book where like nobody really dies. Like you got to see a character get like just demolished to really not be back.
Yeah, it reminds me of an anime, and I cannot remember for the life of me because my son got into anime a couple of years ago, and I was trying to remember this anime. Um, it was this woman who was like a bounty hunter, and every episode she would die, and the next morning she'd be back, and you're like,
Yeah,
the hell
wait a
just
minute. What?
happened?
Yeah. Hold on a second.
Like
Yeah.
there's one death where she gets sucked out of an airplane and in through the jet engine, and
Nice.
then the next morning all she has is a headache. I'm like, what in the hell just happened?
Cannot kill her. Yeah.
Right, and I can't for the life of me remember it, and um, unfortunately now Netflix hasn't been doing the rating system, so I can't really go back and find the damn thing
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
for him to watch. But yeah, I get you on the anime.
Uh-huh.
Guys don't die and
No,
stuff.
no. We'll be back.
Um, all right, so that's awesome about the Star Wars thing. And oh, I forgot to mention Acolyte season 2. They're talking about trying to finish that up. I guess after all the controversy that was going on, why did they cancel it? And then there was a lot of people that were like, this show sucked. But I still think we need to see what happened with Dark Plagueis. You know what I mean?
I know. I know. I did not like season 1. However, I thought it started pretty strong, and then at the end they throw Darth Plagueis at you, and you're like, all right, like I need to see where this goes. I'm with you.
Right, and then they cancel it, and then now they're like, you know what, we're gonna bring it back, and then obviously we've got Ahsoka coming, season 2 coming, which looking forward to seeing like the zombie stormtroopers a little bit more,
Mhm.
and then of course Mandalorian movie next year. So yeah, Star Wars, it's got a lot of things going. Although I did see somewhere where people are like, "Oh, we should do a Darth Vader series." And I'm like, "How about no?" Like, it's the one thing I don't want to see because again, when you saw the end of Rogue One, he's doing this badass thing, and then you know, in the Kenobi series, he's not as strong. Like,
Mhm.
he's kind of weak. So I don't know where you would go with a series like that. Like, I don't know, whatever.
So what I do want though is, yeah, maybe a series would be too much, but what about the idea of like a Darth Vader horror movie? And so one of the ideas that Davey and I have discussed is, what if you find something that takes place between episode 3 and 4, so before Rogue One even,
Mhm.
and you have Vader's castle as sort of like the setting, and you have like Ahsoka Tano or maybe some other character that may or may not know him trying to like break into his castle and like find something or get something out of there, and the whole time that he's in there like looking for the person.
Yeah, hey, that would work. I mean, a
That
horror movie.
yeah,
Although I think I read somewhere where they're thinking about doing a horror movie, Star Wars.
that'd be great. I'd be very interested in
Because
that.
I guess there's a section of books out there that have horror in them.
Okay.
And I was like, well, that might actually not be too bad. It's almost like with Marvel Zombies coming out at the end of this year
Yeah.
on Disney Plus. My son was like, "Are they doing it live action?" I'm like, "No, they're not doing it live action."
Sorry.
Right? No, sorry, they're going to do it anime.
Mhm.
Um, so, wanted to talk about Sinners. I thought this is definitely the best movie of this year, and I will hitch my horse to it that it probably will win Oscar, or Oscars. Let's put it that way. I mean, I saw your podcast on it, so I just wanted to, for my audience, what your take on it was.
I loved it. I absolutely loved it. So Michael B. Jordan is one of my favorite actors, if not my absolute favorite actor. So I went in a little like, all right, I'm gonna like this. Like, I also love vampire movies. So it's like comical that it's gonna be Michael B. Jordan and vampires. And it's Michael B. Jordan playing two characters. So it's literally a movie made for me. So I was going to like it. But
Yeah,
even
yeah,
still, I was blown away by
yeah,
how good it was. It was, you know, a unique in as much as a vampire movie can be unique, right? There's a lot of stuff that we know like are true with vampires, but you can pick and choose what rules you want to use. So
yeah,
I thought they did an awesome job explaining that. I thought all the characters were fantastic. And then the
yep,
music took the movie to another level. The music was amazing. And it was
yeah,
like the setting was so good. And it was one of those movies that it very well could end up being a standalone, and it'll be like the standalone incredible film. But as you're walking out of the theater, I'm thinking there could be an incredible prequel, there could be an incredible sequel, there could be an incredible like universe. Like there's so much that you could do with that movie that yeah, I loved it.
and anything that Ryan Coogler and Michael B. Jordan does is gold anyway. So,
Right. Exactly.
they've done amazing, amazing work. Yeah, uh, you know, it was one of my, I think number two or three on my list of anticipated movies for the year. And I saw it, I was like, this definitely is the best movie so far. And then, looking at my list, I'm like, I don't think there's anything that may top this movie for me. Like
Yeah.
just looking at the rest of the year, I'm like, unless there's something I missed somewhere along the way, I just can't see this being the best movie of this year. Like,
Yeah, it's gonna be tough. And I try to watch a ton of stuff as I know you do. And so we're almost halfway through the year, and it's the clear cut number one movie that I've seen.
oh yeah,
And
absolutely.
I'm definitely excited about a bunch of other movies, but yeah, I'd be pretty shocked for something past this.
Right, exactly. There's plenty of movies, coming out that like, all right, I want to definitely see this,
Yeah.
and then, but I just don't, I know I staked my horse to
Mhm,
Civil War last year. I pounded that as my number one,
mhm.
and then it didn't even get an Oscar nod, and I'm like, are you kidding me right now? Like, am I the only one that might have liked this movie? Or
The Oscars thing is so tricky to, like, predict what's gonna be, and then I'll go back and I'll watch most of the Oscar movies, and I'm like, "I guess." Like, I like all these other ones that I liked, I'm like, "I don't know how they got absolutely snubbed." So,
my
like
my friend Judy and I watch the Oscars every year, but we also go back and watch anything that, is nominated basically, and then we
Mhm.
kind of come up with our own. And this was the first year we had just differing difference of opinions,
Yeah.
because even the award show season had differences of opinions. I mean, one movie won it, at the SAG Awards, and then one wins, the Golden Globe, and it's like
Right.
there isn't a clear cut favorite. And then a Nora sneaks in there, and I'm like, I don't know. I mean, it's
Yeah, I know.
okay.
Lenore was
It's
good, but, like, are we gonna look back 20 years and be like, "Yeah, it was the best picture of, 2024?" Like, not really.
no, no,
Yeah.
no. I honestly, I know that the two actors I talked to on my previous one didn't like Anora at all.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, I guess it's not for everyone.
Mhm.
And somehow it snuck in there.
Yeah.
But I said to them, I said, because they're both independent actors, and filmmakers and stuff. I said, maybe this will open some doors for you guys, because Sean Baker basically did everything. He was independent, but
Yeah.
he had a studio behind him, but he did everything independently. And most of his movies are all the same anyway. They all kind of deal with the same stuff,
Mhm.
and it's like, maybe, maybe there's some opportunities for you guys to, finally kind of break out a little bit,
Yeah.
and so on. So, um, Predator, Killer of Killers was pretty decent as well, and I think uh, you know Predator Badlands is looking pretty good too, coming up in November. So,
Yeah, I mean, I know, and I had maybe read about this Killer of Killers movie, or like I feel like I wasn't prepared for it, and all of a sudden, I had a couple people texting me. They're like, "Yeah, yeah, you got to watch this. It's out right now." And I was like, "Oh." And then I watched it and loved it, and I was already looking forward to Badlands, but now I'm like more excited because I loved Prey. Prey was a great
Prey
sort of
was, yeah.
like rejuvenation to the series. And yeah, now I can't wait for Badlands. And it's the same guy doing all of them, doing Prey and the Killer of Killers and
Hmm.
Badlands. So it should be great.
Yeah, I mean, I'm wondering if obviously we've only seen one trailer for Badlands, but with the way Killer of Killers ends with, um, uh, I forgot what her name is,
I
but
think it's Naru, maybe.
Naru, yeah,
I think
okay,
so, yeah.
Naru, in the cryogenesis tube, you're like,
Mhm.
are we gonna
Yeah,
see her again?
we're getting something.
Hopefully.
Yeah, we're getting something. I know.
So, all right. Obviously you talk sports and movies and comic books. Your top five sports movies of all time.
Oh, let's see. Uh, in some order, it would be The Program. It would be Major League. It would be Blue Chips. Uh, Varsity Blues.
Really?
I love
Wow.
Varsity Blues. I think maybe
Ah.
just came out at the right time for me. I think I was playing high school football, so um, I got to be missing an obvious one. Maybe Remember the Titans. I feel like that's. I'm definitely missing one or two obvious ones, but I feel pretty strong with those five.
Hmm. Well, yeah. Other than Varsity Blues, I probably would agree with some of those. I don't know. For me, obviously, I was a little older when than you are, and Varsity Blues. I don't know, for some reason didn't. I mean, it was good, but it doesn't resonate for me.
Mhm.
For some reason. But Major League, how could you go wrong?
It's fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah. Bull Durham,
Mhm.
another great one. What do you think of Happy Gilmore 2 coming out?
So I'm a huge Sandler fan, and so like admitting that not all of his movies are great, but like I've seen all of his movies, and I will see anything that he makes. So I don't think it looks particularly great, and I think comedy sequels, especially when done so many years after the original, are almost all bad.
Hmm.
I think
Yeah,
it's got an
that's
uphill climb, but I'll
yeah,
give it a go. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, obviously it's going to be on Netflix, but I had mentioned this on the first podcast of this season in January. Movies. So I had like three categories. I had sequels that you or reboots that you didn't know you needed, and then the next category was movies that you might be interested in, but maybe in that other category, and
Uh,
then anticipated movies.
yeah.
Happy Gilmore kind of fell in that region because obviously Happy Gilmore was iconic, and you're like, can it be good, or is it just gonna be, you know, terrible, and you're gonna
Yeah.
be like, ugh, why did he do it? I'm
Yeah.
hoping, even though the trailer looks wild,
Mhm.
and all the cameos and everything else, so I'm just hoping that it will be pretty decent. But it's in that category of like, I want to definitely see it, but at the same time, I'm like, it could be in that other
I know.
category where it's like, do I really need to see
Well,
it?
and it's just on Netflix too, which they've had more bad originals than good. Like
Mhm.
there's definitely some Netflix movies that I enjoy, but they've also had not the strongest track record. And so I think it's gonna be tough, but I don't know. It's a great character. It's obviously I love Sandler, so I think there'll be some laughs in it. I can't imagine it's gonna be great. I just hope it's not one of these like worst movie of the year candidate. Like I'm just shooting for something higher than that. I'll be happy.
Well, I know that Sandler gets a lot of love for the Razzie Awards every
Mhm,
year, which
mhm,
I do a podcast about the Razzies every year as well, or the last 2 years anyway. But like Uncut Gems was amazing
awesome.
of his.
Yeah.
What did you think of Spaceman?
I didn't like Spaceman at all. I thought Spaceman was a hard watch. I thought it was and I was excited about it because I'm like, all right, it's serious Sandler.
Hmm.
He's talking to a spider voiced by Paul Dano. I'm like, I'm in. I'm in on that. I'll give it a go. And I was really bored watching it and I was pretty disappointed.
Mm, yeah, my son saw the trailer and he was like, he's talking to a giant spider. I'm like,
Mm.
It's it's deep space. He's got to talk to somebody."
Yeah, right. Otherwise, it's a pretty quiet movie. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, but yeah, I did read though that Sandler has a movie that was panned at one of the film festivals that's coming out later
Mhm,
this year that they say could generate an Oscar buzz. And I have liked Sandler as a dramatic actor. And I know
mhm,
a lot of people just see him as a comedian. And, obviously some of his stuff, comedy wise, over the years has not been
mhm.
particularly good since, Waterboy. Actually, I think somebody had mentioned, or I read somewhere, can we make Waterboy 2? And I'm like, wait, what? No, let's
Yeah.
let's
Yeah,
not do
let's see how
that,
this
okay?
goes first, and then maybe. But
Right.
yeah,
I'm like, why? It's just, it's been too many years, and what is he, what is he gonna do? Or is it's gonna be his kid or something? You
yeah,
know?
right.
I
Yeah,
don't know.
maybe. I did think
So
he probably should have gotten nominated for Uncut Gems. I remember that year and seeing a bunch of the stuff that came out and being like, he definitely deserved to be at least nominated, and that
yeah,
was that was a mess.
I thought so too. Like I thought it was a really good movie, and
Mhm.
for some reason they were like, yeah, no, not good, that good. So let's see. All right. How about your top five Marvel movies?
All right, let's see. I think I even have this written down somewhere. If we're just doing MCU, actually no, I can give you the whole list here.
Oh, there you go.
Any movie like any Marvel movie like made by Marvel, I would
Yeah, yeah,
like Marvel characters, you mean?
yeah.
All right, I would say Guardians of the Galaxy.
Hmm.
I would say both Infinity War and Endgame.
Well, yeah.
I would say Logan and maybe the original Iron Man, or actually this maybe like Across the Spider-Verse. I was blown away by Across the Spider-Verse. I
I
might put that.
know that sequel keeps getting delayed and
I know.
delayed, and you're
I
like,
know.
come on already, just let's get this over with,
I know it's a long time coming, but as long as they get it right, because the first two movies are incredible. So
Yes, yeah,
I'm very much excited for that third one.
yeah. And Logan was good.
Yeah.
Obviously, Infinity War Endgame,
I mean,
just
awesome. Yeah.
epic. Yeah, I remember my son is a huge Spider-Man fan, and he loved the original Sam Raimi ones. I was not a big fan of it, especially the third one.
Third one
When
stinks.
right,
The third one's real bad. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I do love Bryce Dallas Howard, but she
Mm,
has to play a ditzy Gwen Stacy, and I'm like,
yeah.
no, 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 no.
Yeah.
When they
Wasn't
did Garfield's ones, they had Emma Stone as, the smart Gwen Stacy, and you're like, all
yeah.
right, this is finally
Yeah.
going to happen. And then, nothing. They had plans for the Sinister Six and everything else, and you're like, all right, this is actually going to be pretty decent. And then we're just
Mhm.
gonna we're just gonna leave it
It's
on the
done.
shelf.
Yeah. Pull the plug on
Tom
it.
Tom Holland, you're in
Yeah.
for the Marvel.
Mhm.
So, do you think Blade is ever going to get off the ground?
No. No, unfortunately. And it's funny because for a long time on our podcast, we would talk about the idea of the potential Gambit movie ever being made. And my co-host Davey was always like, "That movie's never going to get made," and he was right. Now, maybe eventually, because Channing Tatum's been introduced, maybe eventually they do, but like it
It,
had been like greenlit, shut down like a million times, and he was right. It never got made. And now he's kind of saying that about this Blade movie, and I think he's probably going to be right about this too.
yeah, I think so too. But if anything, we will probably maybe see Gambit again in probably
Yeah,
Phase 7 when they get to the mutant era, I
yeah,
guess.
I would think so.
Um, and I don't know, Blade was so iconic. The first one was really good. Second one was okay, and then the third one was like,
Yeah, they went a little bit more
it's
comedy. I thought it was pretty good. I thought it's clearly the worst of the three because I liked the second one because it was Guillermo del Toro,
mhm,
and I thought it was well done. I thought it was like a great start.
mhm.
And then the third one they did go kind of in a different direction, but they bring in like Ryan Reynolds, they bring in Jessica Biel. You're like, okay,
Parker Posey,
actual Dracula.
right, actual Dracula. They brought in Triple H as Muscle. Like, what?
Yeah, it wasn't as good.
And I love Parker Posey, but I'm like, every
Right.
time I watch her on the screen in this movie, I'm like,
I know.
you
Yeah.
just don't belong here.
Mhm.
It's kind of like Michelle Williams being in Venom. Like,
I
she
know.
just
Like,
seems so out of place.
yeah. It's like, I don't know. You don't need like an Oscar winning actress in Venom.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. I said that to my son,
Yeah.
and when we saw it, and he was like, so they're making him the lethal protector, basically. I said, I guess. And then, of course, they made the last one, and my son was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
why do this at all? Like, and he's a
I don't-
huge Venom fan. Uh, he was a huge Carnage fan as well from the TV shows and the comic
oh,
books,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
he was like, this is shit. Like,
Yeah.
and I'm like, well, when you make it PG-13 in your Carnage, there's going
Yeah.
to be problems with it. But again, Fox, um, Fox and Sony.
Mhm.
Well, at least Fox has given Marvel, but Sony's got to give it up. And I've mentioned this so many times on my podcast because
Mhm.
Craven was terrible. Madam Web was the worst movie
Mhm.
ever.
Mhm.
I think I voted every category of the Razzies that last year for
Or
Marvel.
Madam Web. Yeah.
Madam Web.
Yep. Well earned. I agree.
Yes, well earned. And I,
Mhm.
I think Sony just needs to let it go. Like, just
Yeah.
give all the
It's over.
properties up like Fox did,
Mhm.
because you're just ruining. It's almost like you want people to watch them, but at the same time you're like, giving the middle finger and saying, haha, this is what we're doing. And
Yeah. Well, like the story goes, they have these characters or whatever for X amount of time as long as they make a movie, and that's why like the Michael B. Jordan, Miles Teller, Fantastic Four, they're like, we're gonna lose the rights if we don't make a movie, so they just like threw that out, and you're like,
and
we
they
don't,
did. They threw
and
it
they did.
out, and
It's
it's like,
terrible.
yeah,
And yeah, they're holding on to Spider-Man because they know it's an absolute cash cow. But then what's confusing is you make these three Venom movies that not only are they all rated PG-13, none of them have Spider-Man in it. And you're like,
correct. Right.
how are you gonna
And you kind of reference what happens, with Spider-Man. That's why Eddie Brock,
yeah.
and you're like, okay, are we going to see Spider-Man
Nope.
eventually? And no, you don't at all. And it's like,
Nope.
and then the third one was just absolutely like, I waited
That's
till
tough.
yeah, I waited till like Netflix had
Yeah.
it, and I was like,
Makes sense.
my son goes, I can't believe I'm sitting here watching this. I'm like, well,
Mhm.
let's just finish this damn thing.
Too far.
Let's see how bad it is.
That's the
Right. And
problem. Is like I'm committed. All these comic book shows and movies, I'm watching all of it. And then for a stretch there, it was almost all positive returns. And now
right.
it's like 50-50 at best. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Well, anything that Sony does, basically, at this
Yeah.
point,
True. True.
stick with Marvel stuff,
Yep.
I guess.
Yep.
You're a big wrestling fan,
Yep.
obviously. What do you make of the product right now? Like, uh, WWE is struggling right now. I think AEW has a niche audience. Like, my son and I have gone to more AEW events than WWE because a little bit cheaper, obviously, clearly. But the AEW tapings sometimes are ridiculous. Like, they're doing, or they did last week and this week, 4-hour shows on Max because they're not wanting to go up against the NBA Finals on their Saturday night collision show. But sitting in those audiences, when they come here and watching it, it's so. And then when you see it on Collision, like the fans are taken out of it, and you're like, you have Dynamite, and everybody's all pumped up, and then by about 3 hours, 3.5 hours in, everybody's like, all right, let's just end this thing.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to a few of the wrestlers last year at Comic Cons. At Terrificon, I met Wardlow, Danhausen, and Ethan Allen Page. I mean, Ego Allen Page, and now he's in NXT
Yeah,
now.
yeah, right.
And they all said the same thing. Like, it's ridiculous how like we have to be there for the entire 4 hours, and we may not even be on the show, but we have to sit there through it. And I'm like, yeah, it's painstakingly long. Like,
Yeah.
it's just, and I get it. Their production value is way different than the WWE, but yeah, but right now with the way WWE is going with the TKO stuff
Mhm.
and the fallout from WrestleMania this year, and then, subsequently, they pulled WrestleMania 42 out of New Orleans, and they put it back in Las Vegas because they need the money because TKO is like 3 billion in debt.
Yes.
Yeah, it's tough to watch, and then Monday night, Gunther wins back the title, and you're like, um, so what was the point of Jey Uso? Like, you built him up, and then what, almost 2 months later, you're like,
Yeah.
he's not going.
Yeah.
And I get it that like there were a lot of people that didn't like that he won the belt, and he's not particularly good on the microphone. But if you knew that ahead of time, why would
Yeah.
you have him do that? So, what do you think of the current product?
Yeah, I don't think it's doing enough to like pull the like non diehard wrestling fan in, right? Like I think you're gonna like the people that you have, like you kind of have them. But I'm somebody now at this point that I kind of watch the pay-per-views. I don't watch as much, and then I'll watch sort of like clips. Like so I'm not sitting here watching Monday Night Raw every Monday. But if something big happens, like maybe it's like a Cena promo or something, like I'll check that out. And so I think they're kind of milking that right now. It's like, hey, it's Cena's last year. So like that's like their primary focus, which I get. Like you have that, you want to do that. And so Cena Punk, but then those guys are gonna fight in Saudi Arabia, right? I think that's the plan
Which
now.
right, which is crazy to think because I remember Punk saying specifically he didn't want to go to Saudi Arabia.
Right. But now
And
he's
right now
oh,
they're like, you know what, you're going, and you're
yeah,
like, well, how did they get him to go? You
probably a
know,
lot of money would be my guess. But yeah, like I was pretty disappointed because I look forward to WrestleMania every year, even though I'm not the weekly fan that I once was.
Mhm.
And I was pretty let down. I watched most of the two nights and I was like,
Well, it should go
it made
back
no
to one
sense too
night.
because the buildup was pretty fun and The Rock was involved in the buildup, but then he wasn't involved at all there. And then he had some sort of like lame ass excuse as to why he wasn't involved. And you're like, all
Well,
right. And
right,
then the finishes were all pretty boring or lame. Like it was very, very underwhelming.
and I just want to know if Cena is really in control of this. Like, how does he not see that this isn't working? Like, people are just not as involved anymore because he's not as believable anymore because you've still got him coming out to his music. You
Mhm.
got him selling t-shirts,
Right.
but some of his promos, you can tell he's having a hard time with it.
Mhm.
Instead of doing, a retirement tour as, as a face, and going out the way he should have. Because if you're going to do the heel turn, he should have gone back to the Doctor of Thugonomics
Yeah, yeah.
days,
Yep.
or maybe something more. But he just doesn't seem committed to it because then he does a podcast or he does a show, and he's just himself. And so now people are like, okay,
Yeah.
aren't you supposed to be a bad guy now?
Yeah,
you know,
it's tough. I think also like the whole lead up was kind of like I think the Cody Rhodes. I'm not a huge Cody Rhodes fan, and like for people who like him, great. I just think that like having him the champion for so long kind of like sucked the life out of the place for a little bit. Then eventually he loses, and you're like, okay, like, I don't know. Everything was very anticlimactic. Everything was like pretty predictable, like the way that things went. And
Well,
this is also sort of like the lull time, right? There's like the Rumble and Mania, and like the road to Mania is always a huge deal. And then it's like, all right, how do we fill that time to get people ramped up? Like, how are we going to get them excited for Money in the Bank and SummerSlam and all these other events? And it's like, I don't know. And I'm with you. I think AEW, you're more likely to watch an incredible match in AEW,
absolutely.
but like
I
the chances of them telling a great story also aren't very strong. Like
no.
they're gonna have an incredible. They're more likely to have that 5-star match, but you're like, well, wait, why are these guys fighting? And you're like, who cares? Because they're good. Like that's kind of like what they go with.
Well, right, yeah, yeah, because every week you're like, okay, so this guy is now going to fight this guy, or you've got people who weren't friendly, and now all of a sudden they're friends, and you're like, okay, can we
They're
just
like, I don't know.
just
It's
just go with some
strange, right?
stuff?
Whereas like WWE is definitely spending more time on their stories, and again, they're hit or miss stories, but they're spending more time on their stories, and then the matches are much more, maybe
Right.
good, probably not.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the one thing about AEW. Like I watch, Dynamite, try
Mhm.
to watch Collision. It's hard. It's Saturday night. Like,
Yeah, that is it just gets lost for sure.
right. It does. Originally, when Punk was there,
Mhm.
that was supposed to be his show, because again, the locker room hated him, and
Yeah.
this, that, and the other, and so they said to Punk, hey, you're going to take Collision, take the guys you want, and everything
Mhm.
else, and so on. And then it kind of fizzles out. But yeah,
Yeah.
AEW for wrestling purposes
Mhm.
definitely is worth more watching.
Yeah.
Storylines,
Yeah.
it is what it is. Like you've got now Mariah May now
Right.
over in
Back in
NXT.
NXT, right? Yeah.
Stephanie Varcour now in on Raw. That looks like they're going to set up, you know, Rhea and her probably maybe down the line for SummerSlam. That would be a
That'll be
huge draw.
that'll be great because I think right now Rhea Ripley is probably the most must-watch the wrestler that they have in
Right.
WWE.
Right.
If I know that she's going to be on the next segment, that's more interesting than whoever else they could toss out
my
there.
my my girlfriend same way.
Yeah.
She simps over her.
Yeah. Yeah.
and
I get it. Yeah.
and now Stephanie Vacour. The other night before Money in the Bank, when they had the 6-person tag team match, they had Alexa, Stephanie, and Rhea on one team, and she's like, "Huh, the goth girls with the big
Yeah.
booties against everyone else," and I'm
Pretty
like,
much. Yep.
"Man, babe, like."
Yeah. That's what it is. Yep. You nailed
So,
it.
all right. I don't have much more. I don't know if you want to ask anything or you
No,
know.
I just how are you enjoying doing the podcast? Have you sort of over the last couple of years sort of like added things to it, subtracted things? Like how
Well,
do you feel like you're doing now compared to like your first few months?
the first 2 months were really difficult last
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
Hearing your own voice back, listening to
Mhm.
it,
Mhm.
it was rather difficult. Um, I've gotten a lot, smoother this year
Mhm.
because again, I have the video part and
It helps.
editing, right, editing out, certain things because again, recording at night sometimes, like I'll be up at 2:45 to go to work, and then having to do a podcast at 9 o'clock, and
Yeah.
then maybe another one after at 10 o'clock, and by 10:30, like I'm running on
Yeah.
sentences,
That's
and it's like, and I go back and I'm like, click, 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 okay, out, and the
Mhm.
podcast goes from like an hour to like 40 minutes or something.
Yeah, yeah, right.
It is what it is.
Mhm.
Yeah, the one thing I want to try to do a little bit more is get more guests on.
Mhm.
Jennifer and Charles. I've known Jen. Um, she was a recommend on Instagram, and she's a local here, but she's out in LA. She has her own horror series and stuff, and she's she's a really good creator and stuff, and her best friend Charles. They were on the show. Um, I did do a short a couple weeks ago, like kind of like throwing shot out there to Bryce Dallas Howard because I got to
Mhm.
meet her last year at Boston,
Yeah.
and I was like, hey, loved you, be on your podcast, and I'm like, I need people to go up and like share it or somehow get it to her because Instagram I tried to do, but
Yeah. Yeah.
like I tagged her in it, but then you go to like the DM area and it's like this account doesn't accept like tags or
Oh,
whatever, and you're
sure.
like, ah,
Yeah.
well, that sucks. But Comic Con season's coming up, and
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to going to. The only thing I'm not looking forward to is Fan Expo this year and Terrificon are on the same weekend.
Oh.
And so Fan Expo has Hayden Christensen's coming back, Hugh McGregor, John Cena's now going to be a part of
Yeah.
it,
Yeah. I saw that. Yeah.
but they're only there one day. And Saturdays are the worst day,
Hmm.
or literally a Comic Con. Like it's the worst day because all the bigger stars, if they're only there one day, is there. And the lines are absolutely insane.
Yeah.
If
Right.
now you've got those guys, you've got Orlando Bloom as well coming,
Okay.
and they're all there one day. I'm like, I don't know. I would rather go to Terrificon because at least there's a ton of people over there that
Right.
I haven't met yet.
Hmm.
Um, and it might not be as crowded because, Fan Expo's got that going on. And
Hmm.
Rhode Island Comic Con is getting bigger by the week.
Hmm.
And it's
That's
gotten
true.
bigger.
Yeah.
I remember the first year I wanted to go, it was the year they got shut down because they had the fire code violations, and then they had to expand to the Dunk and the Omni hotel, and now
Oh, right.
it's so big now,
Yeah.
and it's great because Sundays usually are wrestler day. My son and I go and meet the wrestlers. Uh, I don't usually go to Friday night
Mm.
at a con. There's not a lot of guests there, but
Right.
this past year, they had the Red Dead Redemption,
Mm.
people there, and I was like, you know what, let's do that Friday night. So I took both my kids to that, and my son loved the experience.
Yeah. That's
Meeting
great.
them and having that. So yeah, I just love Comic Cons,
Good.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, are you going to partake in any this year?
It's a good question. We did a lot early on when we were doing the podcast. We went to Boston
Yep.
a bunch of years in a row. We went to Rhode Island. We went to the one in Connecticut. We went to even like Northeast Comic Con, which is like a really
Yeah,
small one.
right. Yeah.
We did all those. We did go back to Boston, or I guess Fan Expo Boston last year after not going for a couple of years.
Yeah.
I think it's still up in the air. We'll see. Everybody's got to check. Me and David got to check our schedules and everything else. But we like to usually pop in for one day, try to interview a few, not even like celebrities, but just interview a few people that are there, and
Yeah,
then kind
I saw
of
your
the podcast.
podcast.
Yeah.
I saw your podcast on it last year, and
Yep.
I actually had press credentials last year for Fan Expo,
Hmm.
and got to shoot B-roll and stuff. And then I was like, that's it. Like I don't like
Yeah.
I can interview some people, but I can't interview the guests.
Yeah.
And
Right.
they also said, well, give us a list of people that you would want to talk to, and I'm like, I never heard back from them, so I was like,
That
all
sounds
right,
about
well,
right.
I
Yeah.
guess
Yeah.
so. But well, it was great talking to you. I'm glad that you came on.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I look forward to your show tomorrow, and going forward and everything else, and then your podcasts. So I try to watch some again with trying to watch all these movies and try to review. I
It's
do
a
try to
lot.
catch some of
Yeah.
yeah, I do try to catch some of your stuff, and
Thanks.
I think you do a great job. So
Appreciate it.
again, thanks for coming on. I appreciate this. So
Anytime.
all right, thank you.
Again, very humbled to Rich Keefe for coming on the show. I know he's a very busy man, and hopefully maybe we'll have him on again at some point down the road. And I hope that you guys all enjoyed it. I hope that you've hit subscribe, like, you can share it, comment on it, anything, in the future, or just in general. So I hope that you guys did like it, and of course, I will see you all at the movies.
You like that, baby? Let him know where I came from, yeah!
See you next time. Bye.
Waiting for you. Goodbye. Goodbye. Goodbye.
Hasta la vista, baby.
That's all, folks.